While African Americans in the North were subjected oftentimes to de facto segregation or segregation in practice, though not by law, African Americans in the South were discriminated against with what's called de jure or by law segregation. Most African Americans in the South were slaves. There was a free black population in the South, but even the free black population didn't have the same political rights or civil rights as the white population in the South. The slaves on the plantations were largely impacted by where they were geographically, as well as the benevolence or the moods of the planter that owned them. Geographically, slaves in the South tended to be on large plantations with cotton production. Moving further south into like southern Louisiana and into the West Indies, it's sugar plantation, which was incredibly deadly. In the upper South, it's a little bit lighter work. There's fewer slaves. Typically, the slaves are out working with the masters in the fields. So geographically, there was a big difference between the upper South and the lower South. And the type of work that was done. The benevolence of the master was also important as well. Each master was legally allowed to do pretty much whatever he wanted. This is where the horrors of slavery come into play. They would physically abuse the slaves, often using the whip as a way to force compliance. One particularly gruesome thing that would be done is the breaking apart of families as a punishment. While slaves were not allowed to legally marry, they did form family units. Husbands and wives, though not legally, they were in practice married, and they would have children. Masters would threaten to sell children away, often did sell children away as an economic prospect as well. So largely the life of a slave was up to the benevolence of the master. Now, most freedmen in the South did live in the cities. They typically worked as artisans. They had more job opportunities than up in the North because there was just fewer artisans living in the South, people to make things. There, you may hear stories. Some of the black population owned slaves, and that may be true, but it's a legal technicality. A freedman might be able to buy the freedom of his wife, for example. But in many southern states, a freed slave was not allowed to stay in the same state where they lived. So they would own the slave, their wife, and then just maintain their residence.